Tired of the old shit, let the new shit begin.
I should probably begin with an apology. Well, I don't know if I have to. I have to apologise. You decide whether I have to apologise to you or not. Rishi Sunak's speech yesterday offered a brief, and it turned out temporary, salve to our battered sensibilities. When he spoke, as he did in terms, I shall remind you in a minute, of a government that would have integrity, professionalism and accountability, I breathed a sigh of relief. I genuinely did. And I shall tell you why. I breathed it because although many of his policies were likely to be pretty toxic or repellent, I felt that those words, those three words, integrity, professionalism and accountability, spoke of a return to a pitch upon which we can all agree the dimensions. Do you see what I mean? Under Boris Johnson, we were not playing by any rules, any recognisable rules. It was very difficult for Keir Starmer to land a punch on him, because it was like trying to nail a blancmange to a wall with rubber nails. The absolute breach of all standards, regulations and requirements was tragic to observe. And I appreciate some people who fell for his shtick and are perhaps still under his spell will struggle to appreciate the sheer scale of the disaster visited upon democracy by a man who would lie as comfortably as the rest of us breathe. But not just lie, of course, actively seek to undo the requirements of parliamentary democracy, the standards, the ethics that are an unwritten constitution, but nonetheless the ties that bind our civilization, or certainly our parliamentary democracy. So Johnson ripped it all up. He would defend bullies. He would not just defend liars, he would amplify their lies. He became elected upon the back of egregious calumnies and proven nonsenses, and so it continued until it could continue no further. Oddly, the lie that finally did for him was the one about not knowing that a bloke he'd promoted had a record of inappropriate sexual behaviour. That oddly did for him, but it was a culmination. It was a classic case of the straw that broke the camel's back. But whatever your politics might be, if you dare, in any circumstances, to describe yourself as patriotic, you have to want the game to be played on a pitch that everybody agrees about, rules that everybody must abide by. A Labour MP is found to have behaved inappropriately. Keir Starmer suspends him immediately. You would want to conserve, even if you had your conservative scarf tied so tightly round your neck that your eyes were out on stalks, you should want a conservative leader to do the same. It should not be the case that you want your team to be exempt from the rules and their team to be forced to abide by all of them. That's the point, right? That's the point. And politics is a dangerous and evil thing when the rules are treated with contempt. Treating the rules with contempt, treating normality and tradition with contempt, sees armed insurrectionists making their way to the Capitol in Washington on January the 6th of last year. That's not an exaggeration. That's what happens when major political figures treat the truth with contempt. So yesterday, when Rishi Sunak said what he said about accountability, about professionalism and about integrity, I allowed myself a moment of optimism.
This government will have integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours.
And I don't think I am going to apologise for that, because it is a deep desire to see this country returning to something that resembles normality and decency that prompted me to allow myself that moment of optimism. I'm going to disagree with him about public spending cuts quite violently, but at least he's going to acknowledge the objective reality of integrity, professionalism and accountability. And then he returns to Braverman, to the Home Office, which this time last week would not have prompted such a extreme response from me, because this time last week, if you'd asked me, and I don't think you did, this time last week I would have said to you that what she did didn't appear to be that serious, and it looks to me as if Liz Truss has used it to essentially get rid of Braverman because they disagreed about immigration. Braverman is committed to reducing immigration. Liz Truss, for her myriad failings, understood that you can't really grow an economy if you're reducing the number of people contributing to it, or not at least prepared to increase it in areas where the need for more bodies, more workers is absolutely acute. So that was my theory last week. Oddly, Dominic Cummings, I think, said something similar, and I often think to myself, if I'm agreeing with that absolute skipfire of a man, then the chances are that it's actually correct, two extremes meeting somewhere in the middle. But I was wrong. That is not what happened. It was not a sort of face-saving exercise or a neat little bit of politicking by Liz Truss. It was a necessary reaction to an egregious offence, and it took a journalist called Tim Shipman, writing in the Sunday Times on Sunday, to make me or help me understand this. Now, Tim, who, in the interest of full disclosure, I should tell you, has been a pal of mine for the best part of 25 years, is probably the journalist with the best contact in the Conservative Party. Certainly, up until the latest iterations, the Truss and Sunak iterations, he had by far the best contacts. His two books on Brexit are seminal texts. They're absolutely definitive. And his great achievement is getting people to talk to him. People tell him stuff that they don't tell anybody else. I don't know how he's done it. I don't know that when we sat opposite each other 25 years ago, either of us would have expected the other one to end up where we have, necessarily, career-wise, but he is brilliant. And he has provided a definitive account of what actually happened and why it is so important. And it is this account that will lead me shortly to ask you what on earth Rishi Sunak is playing at. Whether he doesn't care about professionalism, integrity and accountability, or whether he doesn't understand why putting Suella Braverman back in the Home Office is almost overnight a complete dismantling of any grounds for the optimism that I described to you a moment ago. Let's begin at the beginning, if you didn't read the article. She said in her resignation letter that it was an accident, that her breach of the ministerial code, I'll say that again because, again, it used to matter and it needs to matter again. Her breach of the ministerial code was accidental. It was not. She deliberately sent 2 emails. Both of those emails constitute a breach of a ministerial code. She forwarded her own an email from her political account, from her ministerial account to her private account, and that ban is in place precisely because if you try to send something to someone outside government, a warning flashes up. I mean, it's anti-espionage, this policy in places, although I don't think anyone is actually accusing her of espionage, but it ensures that alarm bells ring in the event of a government minister sending government documents to email accounts that are not fellow cabinet ministers or fellow members of government. She said it was a minor document. That's not true either. It was a paper for a cabinet committee which had not yet met, about a policy that had not yet been agreed. So it's workings. It's confidential information about something that cuts to the very heart of government. It would have ended up as a ministerial statement, a written ministerial statement, which was part of her defence, but it wasn't approved policy. And that's important as well. She claimed that it was done at 4 o'clock in the morning after a long night's work. This is part of the accident defence. That's not true. It was sent at around 7:30, according to Tim Shipman's report in the Sunday Times. Her aides, Truss's aides, Elizabeth Truss's aides, and this is what I mean about him being a bloke that people talk to. Liz Truss's aides are adamant that she lied to the Prime Minister about this. She also claimed in her letter that she went straight to the Cabinet Secretary. Tim Shipman in the Sunday Times reports that she only confessed after Andrew Percy, whose aide was accidentally copied into the email exchange, went to the chief whip, who then went to Simon Case, the cabinet secretary. Lying about the time of an email is particularly stupid because, of course, anyone can see the time that it was sent. And now here's the really weird bit. She wasn't just sending stuff to her own Gmail account. She was then sending it on to an MP called John Hayes, who is a sort of rallying point for particularly right-wing Conservatives. She also intended to send it to John Hayes' wife, but accidentally sent it instead to Andrew Percy's parliamentary aide. He was he's a sort of mentor to right-wingers in the party, and Shipman reports rumours that she runs decisions by him before making them. I can't comment on the accuracy or otherwise of that. I can merely tell you that Shipman's reporting is absolutely first class and always has been. So there it is. The scale of Suella Braverman's conduct absolutely justified her dismissal by Liz Truss last Wednesday, was it? A week ago today, give or take, I think. And yesterday, Rishi Sunak brought her back after saying this.
It's the Labour Party, it's the Lib Dems, it's the coalition of chaos, it's the Guardian reading, tofu eating, wokerati, dare I say, the anti-growth coalition.
Which just makes her ridiculous, not dangerous. What makes her dangerous on a moral or an emotional level is the fact that she boasts about dreaming of deporting refugees to Rwanda, a truly despicable intervention in British public life, the like of which we haven't heard or seen before, or at least not since Enoch Powell was shown the door by his Conservative Party leader. And, of course, it makes a complete mockery of what Rishi Sunak said shortly after becoming Prime Minister yesterday.
This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours.
So she lied about the offences that got her fired. She behaved with a complete absence of integrity. Her ludicrous comments about tofu-eating wokerati suggest that her relationship with professionalism is about the same as my relationship with playing scratch golf, i.e. non-existent. And the simplest notion of all, accountability, you will be held accountable for your actions, has been completely torched by the new Prime Minister on his first day in the job. So, yes, I am going to apologise to you for expressing a modicum of optimism yesterday, albeit that it was sincere and it was in good faith and it was born of a patriotic thirst for a return to some semblance of good sense and stability in government, because what we have seen with the reappointment of Suella Braverman is that Rishi Sunak is every bit as bad as Liz Truss when it comes to competence, and every bit as bad as Boris Johnson when it comes to trustworthiness. And you can mock me and laugh at me and insult me for being surprised by that, but you can't knock me for being disappointed. Because if you don't want a return of some semblance of stability or good sense to government, then you're an idiot, regardless of what your politics are. I don't want your mortgage rates, thankfully, coming down a bit. He seems to have garnered some confidence when it comes to fiscal policy, when it comes to economics. But for goodness sake, if you could come in after, Mr. Blobby could come in after Liz Truss and effect an improvement in the market's confidence in the state of the British government. The rest of it, those 3 points, those 3 words, which actually warmed the cockles of my heart yesterday when I heard him say it. Integrity, professionalism and accountability have been completely torched within 3.5 hours of him uttering them by the reappointment of Suella Braverman to the Home Office. So I do apologise to you for being briefly and wrongly optimistic yesterday. But I'm afraid I would do it again, because I would clutch at whatever straw you offered me if it pointed to the possibility of a return to a political landscape upon which everybody agrees not only to abide by the rules, but also about the importance of the rules. 17 minutes after 10 is the time. So why has Rishi Sunak done it? 0345 6060 973. Some answers are obvious. She declared her support for him on Sunday afternoon when she had perhaps been expected to swing towards Boris Johnson, and that may have been a decisive moment. The idea that Brexit has brought this country so low that Suella Braverman becomes an important and influential political figure is a conversation for the ages. That's clearly part of what has happened here. But Sunak's calculation that he would put the woman who dreams about deporting refugees and lies about breaking the ministerial code back into the cabinet a week after she was busted, why would he do that? What does that say about him? And is there any case at all for telling me this morning to give my head a wobble and calm down, because this is nowhere near as awful as you, James, are portraying it as? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. And don't forget, 12 o'clock today, we have Rishi Sunak's first outing at Prime Minister's Questions. I don't know whether Keir Starmer will ask him how he could have appointed someone who has obviously not only breached the ministerial code in two quite egregious ways, but also lied about it blatantly. But I hope he does. Straight off the bat, the lawbreaker Rishi Sunak recruits someone who breaks parliamentary rules. Not just parliamentary rules, Peter, the ministerial code. He adds they are all rotten to the core. John adds, if I was ever going to vote for them, Braverman's appointment has stopped that. I eat tofu. I sometimes read The Guardian. She's in the role simply to satisfy the UKIP wing, to give them headlines every Saturday about immigrants and what should happen to them. So they've lost my vote until we have a serious Home Secretary. 23 minutes after 10 is the time. Mere hours after insisting that his government would have integrity, professionalism and accountability, Rishi Sunak appointed a Home Secretary, reappointed a Home Secretary, proven to have none of the above. Why did he do it, and what do you make of it? Carolyn is in Altrincham. Carolyn, what would you like to say?
When Rishi said his speech yesterday, I just felt this overwhelming sense of relief and happiness that we were back in safe hands. And it was totally blown by Cruella walking up the road of Downing Street. I thought, what on earth is going on? And it smacks of something really underhand going on, because not only is he now supporting the fact that she's broken ministerial rules, he's supporting that immigration rubbish as well.
I don't think he ever didn't. I don't think he ever came out against the Rwanda scheme. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer when it was announced, so collective cabinet responsibility. I don't know whether we naively think that because he comes across as quite personable, he couldn't possibly be supportive of vile and vicious
I really
policies.
I really thought that. And then it gets you to thinking, he was in government when all this was going on and never said a word. He went along with all of it. He defended Boris Johnson. He was very much a member of the Got All the Big Calls Right brigade when the polar opposite was true. Why did we fall for it then, do you think, you and me? Well, I have no idea, but I feel as though I have been completely duped now.
But it's an odd one, though. Why would he do it so quickly? I mean, possibly he had no choice. Maybe he'd sold his soul to her on Sunday afternoon in return for her support.
It smacks of a dinner at one of their subsidised dinners when he said, I tell you what, you resign, find a way to resign, you resign, bring Liz Truss down and get me in.
Gosh, I mean, who knows? In the absence of full explanations, I don't think that happened, because I think she was fired for a pretty gross misconduct, which she then subsequently lied about. So the idea that we've broken with Johnson's era of weaponised dishonesty, or even Truss's era of weapons-grade incompetence, has been knocked out of the park on day one. I genuinely don't understand it, because he doesn't seem to be stupid. He doesn't seem to be incompetent, and he hasn't previously seemed to be morally corrupt. Morally questionable, yes, because support for the Rwanda scheme is deeply immoral, but not morally corrupt, as in pretending that there's nothing wrong with lying. And, like Carolyn, I feel very stupid for even briefly believing that he was going to return to respect or even reverence for integrity, professionalism and accountability. Thank you, Carolyn. From Carolyn to Colette. Colette's in Enfield. What would you like to say, Colette?
He did it because of the ERG. He did it because he needed to throw red meat to that side of his party. He did it because he would use her as a firewall. And like you, I thought it was a brilliant speech. I thought the grown-ups
It was
had
all
come
right.
back.
I used that phrase. I wish I hadn't. I'm still using it in the newspapers today. But we said what we saw. We saw the speech, and we thought that there was an air of the grown-ups coming back into the room, didn't we?
Except by 8 o'clock last night, that had gone out the window for the simple reason that he has brought back Nadine Zawari.
Yeah.
He's brought back Gavin. I'm not doing it.
All right.
He brought back Gavin Williamson.
Sir Gavin Williamson to you, pal. And honest Bob Jenrick as well. Honest Bob Jenrick's back in the cabinet. That's the bloke
exactly.
who... Yeah, well, you know who he is.
He's pulled the old gang together. And for me, as a woman of colour, I thought this was an Obama moment, despite the fact only 180 MPs voted for him, that the country didn't vote for him.
Yes.
But it all streaked away over the course of the evening. And for Suella to come back to cabinet, not any old job, but that job, I wondered what deal had been done, because it negated everything that he said at 1 o'clock. I'm horrified.
It was the speed.
Horrified.
It was the speed with... I mean, I could forgive a Jenrick or even a Williamson. I really could, because, I mean, they're idiots. And Jenrick, a lot of water has passed under the bridge since he overruled the local council to help a billionaire property developer save millions of pounds on a new property deal in East London. I mean, that's not ideal. I don't want people like that in British politics, but, you know, all parties have had scandals of various hues, and some of them are career-ending and some of them are not. But to do it in a week... To undo his promise about accountability, integrity and professionalism in mere hours, and to bring back Suella Braverman in mere days, I mean, why make the speech? Why promise that you're going to be honourable, and then...
He must have had to have done it, because I can't.
But he didn't have to make
man.
the speech. It was like they're two people. It was like I watched Doctor Who last night.
He needed to do the speech. The speech was good. Let's leave the speech on the side, on the shelf.
Yeah.
But to bring her back decimated his own speech.
It really did, didn't it?
And it's bad, because I actually think, this might be a misnomer, he's intellectually intelligent.
Right.
He's not stupid. He's going to do the graft in the way that Boris just liked to turn up for the party but didn't want to do the shopping at Sainsbury's.
Yes.
He's a bright man. I'm not being patronising.
No, I understand.
And Suella is toxic and reflects a side of the Conservative Party that it just makes me go cold.
Yeah, well, it makes me go cold too, and that's probably why there's so much, I don't know if embarrassment's quite the right word, there's certainly a lot of disappointment at allowing ourselves to feel briefly and mildly warm at 11:30 yesterday morning. By 4:30, of course, the shivers were back. Thank you, Colette. Dominic Raab, of course, back as Deputy Prime Minister. Mick says, please mention Raab. He was such a creep and sycophant of Johnson. He disappeared because of his lack of honesty and integrity. Look, I'm not going to defend Dominic Raab for you. I think the man's ridiculous. He lied about me on this radio station unchallenged, which has always struck me as a remarkable thing for a senior politician to be worrying about. A gob on a stick on LBC telling the unvarnished truth about Brexit. And of course, Sunak also lost the room slightly yesterday when he started talking about those Brexit benefits that 6 years later still haven't turned up. At some point, you're going to have to start wondering whether they're ever going to turn up, lads. But hey-ho, that point has apparently not arrived. But Dominic Raab's just rubbish. Staying on the beach and claiming that the sea was closed when Afghanistan fell is not evidence of moral corruption or an absence of integrity. It's just evidence of being a complete flump. I think his entire political career is revenge for the fact that the legal profession considered him to be ridiculous. He achieved so little as a lawyer. He seems to have dedicated much of his political career to attacking lawyers and laws. Because it's pathetic. He's also, of course, the son of a refugee who continues to agitate against refugees. So there's an awful lot going on with Dominic Raab. But, Mick, I disagree with you. And when it comes to the appointment yesterday that blows absolute holes in Rishi Sunak's claims to be a breath of fresh air, that drives a coach and horses through his claim that his government would have integrity, professionalism and accountability, it's Suella Braverman all day long. We are, really marvelling, if that's the word. Thing is, I mean, if anybody cares, I don't know that any purpose is served by us becoming a sort of yin to the yang of someone like Richard Littlejohn. I don't know if you ever punish yourself by reading his columns in the Daily Mail, but he just hates everybody remotely associated with the Labour Party. Even if they're married to someone in the Labour Party, he'll be deeply insulting and, in the case of Cherie Blair, for example, misogynistic about them. And you know, this hope that some people in a party that you could never vote for are all right is kind of important. I think it prevents you from living a life of bitterness and bile, like a sort of left-wing version of Richard Littlejohn. Living on an unleavened diet of hatred and bitterness. And not just, of course, living on it yourself, but making your living or spending all your time on social media spewing up hatred and bile in the hope that other people will consume it. This might be an epic misjudgment on my part. It's certainly true that every time I offer up a few warm words about a member of the last 3 or 4 governments, events overtake me pretty quickly and they turn out to be fairly awful, or they turn out to have done something pretty grim. But then some politicians I admire from the other side of the house may in their lives have done things that I consider to be pretty grim. I just don't think there's much point in us spending 3 hours together every morning if all we're ever going to do is regurgitate hatred and bile directed at people who belong to a political movement that we don't sympathise with. So I may well run out of road soon. I think Rishi Sunak ran out of road yesterday. One thing that we haven't touched on yet is the sheer absence of talent to pick from. Yeah, anyone bringing Gavin Williamson and Robert Jenrick back into government, even as they bid farewell to the worst of the worst, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries most obviously. It's a bit like picking your team from a squad of 12 or 13. You know, you've got to put 11 people on the pitch. The big teams, the successful teams, have got squads of 30 or 40. Some of the teams in my team's league, the National League North, start the season sometimes with trialists in the programme. They actually appear in the programme as trialist A. They don't even get a name. I'm not quite sure what the reason for that is, and don't at me, my inbox is already going bonkers. But Sunak picking a team from a talent pool that is, well, a talent puddle, we should probably say. Rishi Sunak having to pick a cabinet from a talent puddle. A particularly thin talent puddle, actually. The kind of puddle that's left after 2 days of sunshine and no rain, a stubborn puddle, a stubborn and skinny puddle that has just managed to survive because it's shaded somewhere, like a mushroom under a tree. Rishi Sunak picking an entire cabinet from one of the shallowest talent puddles in history. I'm not feeling sorry for the bloke, I'm just reminding myself that some of the appointments were probably necessitated by the shallowness of the talent puddle. But the Braverman one wasn't. Could have put anybody into the Home Office. Could have put somebody impressive into the Home Office, if there are any impressive MPs. There was a bloke yesterday, a Conservative yesterday, I hadn't come across him before. Jacob Rees-Mogg insulted him in the House of Commons. Now he's back on the back benches. I mean, he said some sensible and intelligent and well-informed stuff in the House of Commons. But if I check what his name was and say it on the radio, it'll turn out that he is not worthy of warm words or support. So do you see what I mean? It would just be so boring if every single day we became the righteous equivalent of a Daily Mail column and spent albeit that, of course, the racism and the misogyny and the homophobia that typifies so much of right-wing politics must be called out. There are people on the right wing who do not subscribe to the racism, the misogyny and the homophobia. But they do all currently subscribe, it would seem to me, to the corruption of integrity, to the abandonment of accountability, and to the absence of professionalism. And those were the 3 things Rishi Sunak promised he was going to fix. And for an hour and a half, I believed him. Did you? And if so, or if not, why on earth did he bring Suella Braverman back? And what does it say to you about the road ahead, about the Sunak premiership, the fact that Suella Braverman, having been fired for absolutely appalling behaviour, is back in the Home Office a week later? I just had a text, I don't know if you heard my phone buzz, a text off a mate who is a political journalist to tell me that the Conservative MP I was just referring to is indeed a bit of a wombat. So, hey-ho, QED, 10:40 is the time. Ruben's in Liverpool. Ruben, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
I mean, like you, I think that the Braverman appointment is definitely the worst of the bunch. When I saw the announcement last night, it definitely shocked me. But my first thought was that it must have been planned in advance. I know you were a bit sceptical about that, but I just thought maybe Rishi's been playing the politics game better than we thought. A couple of weeks ago, everyone thought that Penny Mordaunt was the PM in waiting.
Listen. It can't have been planned in advance because Suella Braverman did terrible things and then lied about it.
Well, I can see what you're saying, but at the same time, she didn't before she made that speech about wokies and tofu-eating Guardian readers.
No, there hasn't been a plan
after that.
If he'd got 200 MPs on the list before Sunday afternoon, she wouldn't have had to come out in support of him. She wouldn't have had any leverage. They have not planned this. You're just going to have to trust me on that, Ruben. You're going to have to take the metal colander off your head and trust me on this one.
No, I believe what you're saying. I just think if, as you say, if it's not planned in advance, then why on earth would you appoint someone after everything that happened in the week running up to Liz Truss resigning?
Because he lied in his speech. He was lying in his speech. He was making because he promised her the job when she came out in support of him on Sunday. That bit was planned in advance, but only from Sunday. And he has swallowed his commitment to integrity, professionalism and accountability by putting a woman possessed of precisely none of the above back into the Home Office 1 week after she was fired for behaving abominably and then lying about it. That's all that's happened. I mean, and in a way, there's an ineluctable pragmatism to it. That was the only path to Downing Street that Sunak could see in front of him that avoided a ballot in which Penny Mordaunt might have done well. The only path he could see, his best chance of getting there without a vote being put to the membership, was to accept Braverman's support in return for whatever she asked for. That's all that happened on Sunday. I'm just surprised he did it.
In that case, does her support make that much of a difference? Could it not have been someone else? Did he not have well over 100? And could it not have been anyone else?
Because she was very close. Because she brings a lot of the right wing with her. I mean, she brings the ER, not the whole of the ERG, because little Marquis Francois, of course, made a speech about how they weren't going to actually endorse either. But she, with her determination to reduce immigration, and although I can't accuse her of racism, racists love her. But you can see it on Twitter. They absolutely love the way she talks about deporting, dreaming. It's not just having support for a policy that would remove refugees to Rwanda. It's dreaming about it that racists love. That is, they'll forgive anything if someone expresses themselves in such horrible terms. So they love her, and that is what she delivers. She delivers that wing of the party and of the support to Rishi Sunak.
But will that unite the party?
No.
Because what is he going to be able to control her? I mean, what is she going to come out with next?
Well, there is a great question. That is a brilliant question. And in fact, to return to the Sunday Times, the doyen of political journalists among my generation, Tim Shipman yesterday was being contacted by various Conservative MPs expressing absolute horror at the Braverman reappointment. I mean, there may be an argument that it proves he's got some ruthlessness, political ruthlessness that some people lacked, but Shipman reported last night security sources regarded Suella Braverman as loose-lipped even before the events of last week. And he wonders, as you do, what not just what is going to go ahead in the future, but what is going to come out now that they're looking into it. Here's a quote from a source. A number 10 source was withering. She doesn't make any decision without consulting John Hayes, who had been acting as an unofficial advisor frequently seen in the Home Office, meetings which had come to the attention of Matthew Rycroft, the permanent secretary. Concerns had been raised prior to Wednesday that Braverman might have been sharing restricted government documents with people she shouldn't have, a source told the Sunday Times. Braverman then agreed to resign. So why has Sunak done it? Simple answer, solely to get the keys to number 10. But how much has he sacrificed in return for those keys? We're about to find out, or we are now finding out, I think. Just to clarify on Rishi Sunak and the despicable Rwanda deportation scheme, here he is talking with Andrew Marr on LBC back in July.
What needs to be changed on our immigration policy?
Well, first of all, we need to make sure that we make our Rwanda policy work. Now, I voted for Brexit for many reasons, but in part because it gave us the ability to control our borders. And I say that as someone who's proudly from a family of immigrants.
A lot of people say a family of immigrants, you're the last person that should be driving people off to flying them off to Rwanda, particularly when they're vulnerable.
It's actually the opposite. This country did something amazing for my family, and it welcomed them as immigrants. We do need to have control of our borders.
And he has, of course, now trumpeted the professionalism that will typify his government. Here's the woman that he made Home Secretary yesterday, a week after she was fired for egregious breaches of the ministerial code.
This figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured, and it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. Health warning, don't believe it. We pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain. Our best days lie ahead, and we're going to be enjoying the freedoms and enjoying the benefits that we gain from leaving.
As of July of this year, the Treasury's estimate of the financial settlement when the UK left the EU, or the windfall, as Suella Braverman calls it, was £35.6 billion. A windfall generally means credit, not debit, right? If you get a windfall, you're better off than you were before. Suella Braverman seems to think that a £35.6 billion bill, and growing, of course, is a windfall. So she clearly doesn't have the first idea what she's talking about, but she dreams about deporting refugees. But why has Rishi Sunak trashed his early claim to care about integrity, honesty, professionalism and accountability for this particular politician? Wendy's in Sandhurst. Wendy, what would you like to say?
James, I'm angry. I'm furious with myself for being duped yesterday.
Gosh. Well, don't be. It comes from a good place. It comes from a good place. It comes from patriotic thirst, is what I call it, Wendy.
I thought it's okay. It's Rishi, okay. He's going to do something to help. He's an intelligent man. It's going to be fine. He's going to try and dig us out of this hole, and it's okay. And then, bam, there she is. There she is, walking down Downing Street with that smirk on her face. And I thought, oh, God, it's the end. It's the end. It's the end. It's same old. Next. Who's next?
Meet the new guy.
Bring him on.
Meet the new guy. Same as the old guy. I think you were warmer than I was. I knew that we were going to have some pretty toxic policies when it comes to refugees and spending cuts, of course. And there will be arguments about the necessity or otherwise of the latter. But the analogy I'm sticking with is that I thought we were going to go back to an agreed set of rules by which everybody played, and we haven't, have we?
Yeah,
we haven't.
No. There's one set of rules for certain people, another set of rules for other people.
Johnson put Priti Patel straight into the Home Office after she'd been fired. She'd been fired by Theresa May for lying to her, and then left her in the Home Office after she was found by his own independent advisor to have been a bully. And this, bizarrely, Sunak has started with an almost textbook blueprint of Boris Johnson's conduct towards a Home Secretary.
Yeah. So I rest my case. Same old.
It is.
Same old. Nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
No.
I'm
so angry. My heart's going like the clappers, James. It's going like the clappers.
Well, let me.
I'm so angry.
I don't want your heart going like the clappers. Do you know what my Facebook did yesterday?
No, what?
Oh, actually, I shouldn't. I just probably needs a trigger warning. But it recommended something to me that was really chilling. I made me very conscious of the dangers of the heart going like the clappers. I shall share the details with you shortly, but I need to double check a couple of details first. Anyway, I'm here. Do you want me to calm you down, Wendy?
Yes.
Would you like, for example...
Tell me it's all going to be okay,
No,
James.
I can't tell you it's all going to be okay.
They're all going to push off.
But I can tell you that Nadine Dorries is no longer in the cabinet, and she is now pursuing a new career as a television presenter. And I am in the very privileged position of being able to demonstrate to you just how well she's doing. Would you like to hear this?
Fabulous.
Here you go. This is Nadine Dorries trying to present a television programme.
Can Coming up on tonight's programme, for a change, a man who is going to clear up a woman's mess. That's Rishi Sunak as he enters number 10. As you were, Sunak's stability extends to the cabinet with the big beefsteak and all cages, but Braverman back at home in the Home Office. Sorry, I've just completely messed up. They're in our studio and we've risked them for a clue. Stick around for Just Stop Oil live.
There you go.
Has she been taking lessons from Liz Truss?
I don't know who she's been taking lessons from. Thank you, Wendy. A lot of women ringing today. I probably because we are talking about a female politician. Cam's in Norwich. Cam, what would you like to say?
Oh, my goodness. Hello, James. You've also got another shaking woman at the end of the phone, not just because I'm talking to you, but because I've got so much to say, and I don't know where to start.
Well, take all the time you need. Take all the time you need.
Okay, well, basically, like many people, I think I woke up yesterday with a positive attitude, trying to keep an open mind, just thinking, will the next 2 years be tolerable rather than infuriating and a return to what we've just dragged ourselves out of? And I'm afraid by lunchtime, the hope was back in the box.
Yeah. Why do you think?
Where to start? I think the appointment shows as much about Sunak's weakness as it does about Braverman's incompetence, and he's just clearly on a leash from the ERG still. The party hasn't changed. If that's what it takes to be unified, then nothing is any different, and we are going through the same old Tory party rat-eating rats scenarios. It's just not what the country needs right now.
How long before the circular firing squad starts again? Let's be purely pragmatic, all right? Let's see it as his job.
Yes.
This week.
Yes.
This weekend was to get himself into Parliament, to get himself into Downing Street, by hook or by crook.
And can I stop you there?
Yes,
because I thought on Sunday...
Sound like Jeremy Paxman. Go on.
Don't get me started. I love that man. But anyway, on Sunday, my instincts were that Sunak was in cahoots with Johnson. They were trying to strike some sort of dodgy deal.
Right.
My heart sank. If he brings Johnson back, you know, God forbid. But anyway, the cahoots have been done with the ERG. So what does that say about his judgment?
No, but I'm asking you to set aside thoughts about his judgment and focus solely on the mission to get into Downing Street. And he has done it by hook or by crook, which from one angle, it's not an angle I look at it from, but from one angle, that's successful. That's good politics.
That's politics. But listen, if he brought Braverman back, and I think it's really important here that we put her revolting ideology to one side here, because that's playing into exactly what she wants. And Starmer has to avoid that at the dispatch box today, because if he goes down that route, he'll have wokerati thrown at him, he'll have tofu eating, Guardian reading.
Does that land? I mean, we're a bit of an echo chamber on stuff like this, because I can't quite imagine anyone being stupid enough to enjoy that sort of political rhetoric, but presumably there are people who do.
The flag wavers do, and I think if you're a patriotic flag waver and you want planes flying off to Rwanda, then where do you stand on national security? Where do you stand on somebody who has clearly breached so many lines? I mean, let's not even mention the incompetence, because again, that's playing into personalities, and they would use that as, you know, she's breached national, you know, she's a security risk. She's not fit to do the job. And therefore, that in itself, with Sunak making that judgment, I think it's day two. And I'm afraid it's not looking good.
It's really not, is it? And of course it leaves us wondering what Rishi Sunak actually stands for or believes in. Fiscal competence, stability are relatively vague terms, but we have a fairly clear grasp of what they mean. Beyond that, is he actually passionate about anything? Does he believe in anything? Does he believe in precisely the sort of bilious policies that Priti Patel and Suella Braverman are pushed forward by the Conservative Party to promote, or does he share some of these horrific views, or does he care about different things? I honestly don't know. I mean, who is he? We tried to find that out yesterday, and of course the longer this conversation goes on, the more ridiculous all of us feel about being very briefly tempted, if you like, tempted into hope. We're back to that wonderful line in Clockwise, uttered by John Cleese's character. It's not the hope. It's not the despair that gets me. I can cope with the despair. It's the hope. Maybe I am a victim of footballification this afternoon. Maybe the things that I thought made Rishi Sunak's debut as PMQs, I mean, genuinely appalling, absolutely unbelievably awful. Maybe the same things make other people think it went rather well, because there is some praise for him, mostly from predictable sources and therefore slightly deluded contributors to public discourse, but not conclusively, not exclusively. Some people I rather admire think that he did a good job, so I don't get. People that are, I mean, historically wrong about everything from Boris Johnson to Brexit are bound to be pretending that they liked it, and what they liked about it was this ludicrous litany of meaningless guff. North London, criminals, protesters, uncontrolled immigration, Jeremy Corbyn and Brexit. What's new about Rishi Sunak's performance as Prime Minister? Well, I really like the way he went in hard on Brexit, Corbyn, immigration. Oh, nothing new at all. Meet the new guy, same as the old guy. So I don't know. But anyway, here's the thing. Phone line's open. 03456060973 is the number to call. What did you think of that? Let's start with Graham, who's in Rickmansworth. Theo is still here. We'll return to him shortly, but I want to get some other voices on the old radio. And if you hit the numbers now, you will get through. I just thought it was appalling. I can't believe anybody would disagree. And remember, yesterday I was nice about him, so I'm not being all footballified myself. I'm perfectly capable of loosening the knot in my scarf to naively welcome what appeared to be a genuine promise to start valuing accountability, integrity and professionalism. But then he just stood up and did Boris Johnson's greatest hits without really having the singing voice for it. Graham's in Rickmansworth. Graham, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, James.
Hello,
first-time caller.
Welcome.
Unfortunately, I think I'm just adding to the volume in our little echo chamber here, because in the last 30 seconds...
Oh, no. Oh, he's been cut off for using the word echo chamber. Tony's in Horsham. Tony, what did you make of it all?
Hello, James. Well,
Hello.
I thought it sounded like the PMQs could have been led by Liz Truss or Boris Johnson. The words were almost the same. It just sounded like the same old script. And what worries me is that we're obviously into a new era of not answering questions with straight answers. I noticed that with...
Was it always like that? I mean, it's so long since we had a Labour Prime Minister. I suspect Gordon Brown probably tried to provide proper answers, but are we sure Tony Blair did?
Well, Tony Blair, wasn't he the king of spin?
Yes.
With Alistair Campbell. I know that all prime ministers seem to do it, but it's just frustrating when you have the ability to listen on radio to the PMQs. You just hear the same old argy-bargy, he said, she said, and no straight, I mean, particularly the question asked by Keir Starmer about whether officials had advised
That's
against
going to come back. Because what he needed to do, and I'm sure what he wanted to do, this is why it's fascinating, and no wonder Theo gets so excited. He needed to draw a line under it, didn't he? He needed to be a fresh start, but he's ended up with one of Liz Truss's heaviest millstones round his neck. He's ended up with Suella Braverman still in the Home Office in an even worse position than she was before she left the Home Office. I mean, just being awful and saying those disgusting things about dreaming about deporting refugees was bad enough, and her tofu-eating wokerati gibberish at conference. So she was already a bit of a liability, even though the far-right like her. But she's now damaged goods because she got fired for breaking the ministerial code twice. So any hope Rishi Sunak has of a fresh start or drawing a line under what went before has disappeared in a Suella Braverman-shaped cloud, hasn't it?
Well, it almost sounded actually as if Rishi Sunak had been in place for 10 years or more. He sounded like he was...
He sounded confident. He sounded more confident than he did yesterday, didn't he?
Yes, he had, but it was the same with the same not answering questions. It was the same, yes, but Labour's done this, and at least Keir Starmer held his integrity. He stuck to his questions. He didn't hurl any real political abuse. It was just factual.
And you had a Conservative leader after the last month trying to accuse Labour of economic incompetence or economic irresponsibility. That was the point where Starmer actually started laughing. And that is another point where I'm utterly baffled by how anybody could be viewing that in a positive light. You've just seen the Conservative Party tank the pound on a scale that's literally never happened before. A Prime Minister chased out of office by her own fiscal incompetence, having already sacrificed her Chancellor on the altar of trying to restore a little bit of stability. And then he tries to accuse the Labour Party of being bad with money. And some people are tweeting that it went very well for him. My phone lines are open. They are not ringing off the hook. So challenge me. Tell me why it did actually go well. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. How could anybody think that was good? I'm going to squeeze in Liz in Oxford because she's been on hold for ages. We only have 90 seconds, Liz, but it's all yours.
Okay, I'm fine. I mean, that was kind of abysmal, frankly.
Yes.
He says,
Theo's analysis, it wasn't that bad, was it? I thought he was...
No.
What?
Not at all, no. Rishi Sunak, I'm sorry.
Thank goodness for that. It was awkward.
I mean, he says I'm going to be grown up and serious, and then it proceeds to be anything but. But I think the really important thing on the Suella Braverman question and the whole tough on crime nonsense is what he means by that is the public order bill, which Charles Walker, Tory MP, we're not talking Labour here, Tory MP stood up and said essentially that public order bill allows them to identify people they think might disruptively protest and then slap them with a GPS tracker without any kind of conviction, which is just...
It's honestly, all a bit minority. It is absolutely terrifying. In fact, it's so terrifying. I shouldn't really have lent in there to an observation comparing it to Minority Report. Liz, thank you. I warned you that we didn't have long, but you've reminded me not only the public order bill on the agenda, but of course the return of Dominic Raab to the Justice Department. We said some nice words about Brandon Lewis. It's not the curse, because, I mean, he's pretty dismal in Northern Ireland, wasn't he, when he promised to break the law in a very limited and specific way. But he had a good innings at the Ministry of Justice, and you may or may not have noticed that the strike by barristers ended, largely because he did negotiate and did sit down and did behave like a grown-up, so Rishi Sunak's thrown him out of the Justice Department and indeed of the Cabinet. But if Raab's return resurrects his determination to withdraw the United Kingdom from the European Convention of Human Rights, here's something I want you to bear in mind and share with all the people in your life still swallowing this nonsense. Only 2 countries have withdrawn from the European Convention of Human Rights, to the best of my knowledge. I could be wrong on this, but I don't think I am. Those 2 countries are Greece, shortly after a military coup undertaken by some colonels, and it was readmitted to the European Convention of Human Rights after they had got rid of the colonels who mounted a military coup. And the second country to withdraw from the European Convention of Human Rights was Russia, after they invaded Ukraine. So, given that Rishi Sunak just ran through an absolute litany of ludicrousness with North London and Jeremy Corbyn and Brexit and protesters, don't be surprised if the European Convention of Human Rights is the next thing that you're told that you're supposed to hate for reasons that they never really explain. Just remember that it would put us in the same company, in the company of post-coup Greece and Ukraine invading Russia. Go Dominic.